ADX Florence Supermax food tour. Would you survive this? The meal no one finishes. It's 12:03 p.m. inside the world's most secure prison, ADX Florence. Lunch trays slide through the steel food slots one by one. Each tray identical. Each meal weighed to the ounce. An inmate named Reynolds sits cross-legged on the concrete floor of his solitary cell, staring at what's in front of him. A small rectangle of gray meatloaf, a cup of lukewarm beans, and a slice of bread as hard as a brick. He hasn't spoken to another human being in 11 years. He pokes the meatloaf with a plastic spoon. The smell? Sour grease and disinfectant. He closes his eyes, swallows, and instantly vomits it back out. He screams, slamming the tray against the wall. The sound echoes through the concrete hallways. Down the corridor, another inmate laughs. Not because it's funny, but because it means someone else is breaking too. At ADX Florence, the food isn't just fuel. It's a psychological weapon. And this so-called meal, has driven more men insane than any beating or riot ever could. Now imagine you're locked in a concrete box the size of a bathroom. No sunlight. No voices. Just the sound of clanging trays and your own breathing. Would you survive this? Pause for suspense. Let's go inside the food system of America's most feared prison, where every meal is part of the punishment. Welcome to the concrete cafeteria. The story begins in the late 1990s, when ADX Florence first opened. The government called it a clean version of hell. But for inmates, even food became a way to remind them that this place wasn't made for comfort. It was made to break you down. Inside ADX, inmates don't eat in a cafeteria. There's no chatter, no tables, no shared meals. Every single tray is delivered through a narrow steel slot by a guard wearing gloves and a face shield. The food is nutritionally balanced, according to the Bureau of Prisons. But former inmates describe it as gray, tasteless mush that feels like it's been recycled from yesterday's garbage. Breakfast might be oatmeal the consistency of glue. Lunch, a cold sandwich with slices so thin you can see through them. Dinner, overcooked beans and a spoonful of mystery stew. And everything, even the milk, tastes faintly of bleach. Guards don't talk. They slide the tray, slam the slot, and move on. The silence that follows is deafening. The smell of disinfectant never fades. But it's not just about taste. The design is intentional. Each inmate is isolated. Meals are identical. There's no smell of real food cooking, no warmth, no flavor, just sustenance without humanity. A former correctional officer once said, "Food at ADX isn't meant to nourish the body. It's meant to remind them they're not human anymore." That's how deep the psychological game runs. Reynolds counts the seconds between each tray drop. He marks them on his wall just to feel time passing. 3 meals, same flavor, same tray, same silence. But one day something strange happens. His tray slides in, and it's empty. No food. No cup. Nothing. Just a note. It reads, "Discipline meal, for insolence." Reynolds realizes they're about to serve him the loaf. The loaf, the punishment meal. They call it the Nutriloaf, a mix of beans, vegetables, flour, and mystery meat, all mashed together, baked into a solid brown brick and served cold. It's technically balanced. But to those who eat it, it's a symbol of control. Guards hand it to Reynolds without a word. No tray. No spoon. Just a brown brick wrapped in paper. He picks it up. It's heavy, greasy, and reeks of salt and old oil. He bites. The taste hits like sand and mold. His teeth crunch on something hard, maybe a bit of unwashed bean shell, maybe worse. He gags but forces it down because if he refuses to eat, he loses his next meal too. Every prisoner here knows, you don't finish the loaf, you don't eat tomorrow. Over the years, dozens of inmates at ADX have filed lawsuits claiming the loaf caused stomach pain, vomiting, and dehydration. But the courts call it constitutional. It's not torture, they say, it's just food. Days pass. Reynolds begins to hallucinate from hunger. He sees faces in the cracks of the wall. He hears voices whispering through the vents. He starts talking to his loaf like it's alive. Then one night, during a routine check, guards find something inside his loaf, a piece of metal. A sharpened screw. Someone had tried to smuggle in a weapon using food. And now the entire block goes on emergency lockdown. Meals stop completely. Starvation protocol. When there's a security breach at ADX, everything shuts down, even food. For the next 48 hours, no one gets trays. Guards patrol with gas masks. The sound of banging fists echoes through the tiers, hundreds of men screaming for food. Reynolds licks the condensation off his sink faucet. Others drink from the toilet. Inside this silence, time warps. Every minute feels like an hour. The fluorescent lights never dim. Hunger becomes the only thing left to feel. But here's the thing, ADX Florence has a method to this. Starvation isn't chaos. It's procedure. It's part of how they control riots before they start. They don't use tear gas. They use hunger. By the third day, guards finally resume meal service. But now, every tray comes with a warning: tampering with food results in disciplinary isolation. And that isolation, it means no hot meals for a month. That's when Reynolds snaps. He takes the new loaf, breaks it apart, and scrawls one word on the wall using the mushy crumbs. Help. That message gets noticed, not by guards but by the inmate 2 cells down. A man who's been at ADX since before Reynolds arrived. And that man has a plan. The underground kitchen. Even in total isolation, inmates find ways to survive. Some trade messages through drains. Others tap on walls using Morse code. But the clever ones? They build their own underground kitchen system. Inside ADX, food becomes currency. A single packet of ketchup can buy protection. A sugar cube can buy silence. Reynolds learns from the old inmate, a man known only as Slim. Slim teaches him how to smuggle seasoning from his hygiene kits, toothpaste lids, salt scraped from pretzels on commissary day, even instant coffee dust used as makeshift sauce. Together they cook without fire. Using body heat, they soften beans by wrapping the food packets in cloth and pressing them under their armpits for hours. They crush crackers, mix in water, and shape them into cookies. To outsiders it sounds disgusting. But to men in cages it's freedom and flavor. For a moment, Reynolds starts to feel human again. He even laughs quietly to himself while chewing a mixture of beans and coffee. But that night, the guards find contraband, a tiny piece of aluminum foil in his vent. They trace it back to Reynolds. By morning he's dragged from his cell, chained, and placed in disciplinary housing, the infamous black room of ADX Florence. And in there he's told he'll receive restricted diet meals only. Would you survive this? In the black room, meals are delivered once every 24 hours. It's a single loaf, a cup of water, and nothing else. No utensils, no tray, no light. Days blur together. His stomach cramps. His mind drifts. He begins to imagine that he's back home, sitting at a dinner table. He can smell real food, fried chicken, cornbread, orange juice. But every time he opens his eyes, it's gone. He starts whispering to himself. It's not food. It's punishment. After 2 weeks, Reynolds is returned to his old cell, thinner, quieter, eyes sunken. He doesn't shout anymore when his tray slides in. He just eats silently. And that's the point. The system worked. The food broke him more effectively than chains ever could. Now imagine this. The next time you complain about a bad meal, picture what's on their menu. Gray loaves. Bleach water. Isolation. A place where every bite tastes like control. So, would you survive the ADX Florence food tour? The Hunger Game. 2 weeks after his punishment, Reynolds begins to notice something strange. Across the tier, meals are disappearing. Guards walk faster. Fewer trays are being delivered. Rumors travel through the ventilation system. Whispers tapped in code, the Hunger Game's back. Every few months, inmates at ADX secretly start what they call the Hunger Game, a silent protest against the food system. It's not about freedom. It's about control, a way to remind themselves they can still choose something even if it's just to starve. Reynolds watches his tray slide in. He doesn't touch it. He pushes it back out through the slot. A small act of defiance, but in here that's dangerous. The guards notice. They write his number down. If he refuses 3 meals, he gets a wellness check. If he refuses 5, he's force-fed. By the 3rd day his body aches. His hands tremble. His mind begins to blur between dreams and reality. He sees visions, a full plate of fried chicken floating in front of him. The smell of grease. His mother's voice calling from another room. He reaches out, but it's only air. Then at 2 a.m. the cell door opens. Guards in white gowns and masks drag him to the medical wing. A thick rubber tube slides down his throat. Force feeding begins. The liquid tastes like metal and chalk. He gags, chokes, and cries silently. In the corner, a nurse writes notes on a clipboard, not even looking at him. This is ADX's version of mercy. You don't eat? They'll feed you anyway. Smuggling flavor. After that night, Reynolds swears he'll never go through that again. He starts to eat, but not because he wants to, because he's terrified of the tube. Then one day during commissary week, a small miracle happens. The guards deliver a care box, sugar packets, instant coffee, dry crackers, and ketchup. To anyone else it's nothing. But in ADX this is gold. Using a piece of sharpened plastic from his toothbrush, Reynolds carves open the ketchup packets. He mixes them with crushed crackers and a bit of water from his sink. He spreads the red paste on the wall and lets it dry under the flickering light. His version of pizza sauce. He shares his trick with Slim, his neighbor. Slim responds by sliding something through the vent, a tiny bag of powdered ramen. For weeks they experiment like secret chefs. Coffee grounds become seasoning. Toothpaste lids serve as plates. They even create something called ADX brownies, a mix of crushed cookies, coffee, and water pressed into squares. Tastes awful. But to them it's freedom. Flavor means control. Control means sanity. But one day, a rookie guard notices the ketchup stains on Reynolds' wall. He reports it as graffiti. Within an hour, Reynolds' cell is raided. They confiscate everything, his coffee, crackers, even his plastic spoon. A note is left behind on his steel bed. Food privileges suspended for unauthorized materials. Reynolds stares at the note, trembling. He realizes he's about to experience the one thing every ADX inmate fears most: the cold diet. The cold diet. The cold diet is ADX's silent punishment for non-compliance. No hot meals, no variety. Just cold sandwiches, apple slices, and a single carton of milk. Every day for 30 days. The bread is frozen, hard as rock. The bologna meat is so thin it curls at the edges. Sometimes it's half frozen, sometimes it's half rotten. The taste doesn't matter. It's about reminding inmates what obedience costs. Reynolds tries to chew the first sandwich but his teeth ache. He sucks on the milk instead, pretending it's soup. By day 5 he's lost 7 pounds. By day 10 he can't tell what day it is anymore. He starts to memorize the pattern of guard footsteps, timing his bites to the rhythm. He hums old songs under his breath, pretending he's back home in his mother's kitchen. The mind finds comfort in lies when the stomach is empty. But one afternoon, a new sound cuts through the silence. A scream. Someone in the tier has snapped. The scream turns into banging. Then comes the smell, burning fabric. An inmate has set his mattress on fire after being served another cold meal. Sprinklers burst. Water floods the hallway. The smell of smoke and bleach fills the air. Guards rush in with shields, shouting commands. For Reynolds, it's the first time in months he's seen real chaos, and in a twisted way it feels like life again. But after the smoke clears, they return the same cold sandwich to his slot, as if nothing happened. The last meal. Time passes. Weeks turn to months. Reynolds' hair thins, his skin grays, his voice disappears. Then one morning, a guard opens his door, something that never happens. "You're being moved," he says. Reynolds blinks in disbelief. Transferred? No one leaves ADX early. But he's not being freed. He's being moved to D-Unit, where the worst offenders spend decades without human contact. Before the transfer, protocol demands one thing: the final meal. Not a death row tradition but a logistical one. A last hot meal before long-term isolation. It's chicken. Real chicken. Greasy, hot, with mashed potatoes and a biscuit. The smell alone makes Reynolds cry. He takes small bites, savoring each one. The warmth feels like sunlight in his chest. For a moment he forgets where he is. He chews slowly, whispering to himself, This is what life used to taste like." Then the guard clears his throat. "Done?" he asks. Reynolds nods, but as he does, the guard slides something else into the slot, a sealed brown bag. Next meals will be restricted again until relocation is complete. Reynolds opens the bag. It's the loaf. The punishment starts again before he even leaves the room. His last hot meal becomes his last memory of flavor. The taste of freedom. Years later, Reynolds is finally released. Not because he served his time, but because his mind is gone. Psychiatrists describe him as mentally unfit for continued isolation. He walks out weighing barely 120 pounds, clutching a small paper bag of personal items. Outside, a reporter asks the question, "What's the first thing you want to eat?" Reynolds doesn't answer. He looks down at his hands, trembling, and whispers, "Something that tastes real." He walks to a diner nearby. The smell of bacon and butter fills the air. He sits down, orders pancakes and orange juice. The waitress smiles as she sets the plate down. For the first time in 20 years, Reynolds sees color on his food: golden syrup, melted butter, fluffy bread. He picks up the fork, but his hands won't move. He starts shaking uncontrollably. Tears run down his face. He realizes the truth: the food isn't the problem anymore. It's him. ADX Florence didn't just take away his freedom. It reprogrammed his brain. He takes a single bite. The taste of sugar and warmth hits him like lightning. For a split second he smiles, then drops the fork. He can't eat another bite, because deep down he's still tasting the loaf. The prison chef. They call him Chef Ray, a former drug lord turned inmate who spent 15 years inside the walls of ADX Florence. No knife, no stove, no pan. Yet somehow he's managed to create meals that the men on his tier still whisper about years later. When Reynolds first hears about him, he thinks it's a myth. But late one night, a faint knock echoes through the vent. Morse for food. Then, like a ghost, a tiny package slides through the air vent, wrapped in toilet paper, sealed with toothpaste. Inside, a small, flat cracker with a smear of orange paste. Reynolds takes a bite. Salty, spicy, alive. It tastes like freedom. Chef Ray's kitchen is legendary. He uses leftover seasoning packets, toothpaste caps, bits of foil and empty milk cartons to build makeshift cooking gear. He heats food by wrapping it in plastic and laying it against the radiator pipes. His most famous dish? The ADX lasagna. Layers of instant noodles, ketchup and crushed crackers, cooked slowly against the concrete wall. Sounds crazy. But for men living on punishment loaves, it's art. Then one day a guard smells something strange during rounds. He orders a full search. When they tear open Ray's cell, they find foil scraps, plastic wrap, and dozens of empty ketchup packets. The punishment? Ray loses commissary privileges for a year. His underground kitchen is shut down. His last words before being dragged out: "You can take my food but not my recipe." The legend of Chef Ray lives on, whispered through air vents, passed from cell to cell like contraband hope. The secret feast. Months later, Thanksgiving approaches. ADX Florence doesn't celebrate holidays. No decorations. No turkey. But that doesn't stop the inmates. Through Morse code they organize what they call the feast. Each man contributes one item from commissary: coffee, crackers, sugar, a packet of tuna. Then at exactly midnight they eat together, alone in silence, each in his own cell, united only by timing. Reynolds crushes his crackers, mixes in tuna and sugar. He calls it sweet fish. Slim makes instant coffee thicker than mud and toasts imaginary cheers through the wall. In that moment there's laughter, muffled but real. The feast isn't about taste. It's about remembering they're still human. But ADX never misses anything. A guard monitoring the cameras notices synchronized movements across multiple cells. To him it looks like a coordinated riot. Within minutes, alarms blare. Lights flash. Officers storm the tier. Every man is searched, their cells flipped upside down. The commissary is confiscated. The feast is over before it begins. And the message is clear. In ADX, even celebration is a crime. When hunger turns violent. After the Thanksgiving incident, food supplies tighten even more. Commissary items are cut. Meals are smaller. The guards say it's budget reduction. The inmates call it starvation season. Tension boils. Men start fighting over crumbs slipped under cell doors. Rumors spread that one inmate bit another just to steal a peanut butter packet. Reynolds feels himself changing. His dreams are filled with food he can't touch. Sometimes he wakes up biting his own hand. One afternoon, during tray distribution, a guard drops a sandwich by accident. 2 cells away, an inmate named Lopez reaches through his slot and grabs it before the guard can react. The guard shouts, "Drop it," but Lopez bites down hard, his eyes wild, his jaw locked like a dog. Seconds later, pepper spray fills the tier. Lopez collapses, coughing, face burning. His stolen sandwich still clutched in his hand. When it's over, the warden orders a complete shutdown of commissary access for the entire block. And just like that, everyone pays for one man's hunger. The message echoes through the vent. At ADX, hunger is a crime, but it's also the only thing keeping you alive. The faith diet. Weeks later, Reynolds meets a new inmate through the vents, a quiet man named Ibrahim. He spends most days praying and refuses certain meals for religious reasons. Reynolds doesn't understand how anyone can turn down food in a place like this. But Ibrahim explains. They can control our bodies, not our faith. During Ramadan, Ibrahim fasts from sunrise to sunset, even though he can't see the sun. He marks time by the buzz of the air vents and the sound of guards changing shifts. He shares a secret with Reynolds. If you focus on faith instead of hunger, you can survive anything. He teaches him to meditate before eating, to imagine the food as light, not punishment. For the first time, Reynolds feels peace. He stops rushing through his meals. He thanks the universe for each bite, even the gray ones. But ADX doesn't respect rituals. When Ibrahim asks for halal meals, his request is denied. Instead they give him pork by mistake. He refuses to eat. Days pass. He weakens. His cell stinks of sweat and hunger. By day 10 he's found collapsed on the floor. The official report calls it voluntary starvation. But to the men inside, it was faith stronger than hunger. The last bite. Years pass. Reynolds is no longer the angry man who arrived. He's thin, quiet, his eyes calm but empty. One day a guard slides his tray and says, "You're being released soon." The words don't register. After decades of gray food and gray walls, he can't imagine color anymore. Before leaving he gets his final ADX meal, beans, bread and water. He stares at it for a long time. Then he takes a slow, deliberate bite. It's cold, salty, tasteless. But this time he smiles. Because for the first time ever he chooses to eat it. Not out of fear. Not out of hunger. Excellent. Continuing the full cinematic documentary script for your viral video. The Kitchen Rebellion. It starts small, a whisper down the tier. An inmate named Tyrone Briggs, a former gang enforcer, gets fed up with what he calls garbage disguised as meals. He's done 19 years in different prisons but nothing compares to ADX. Here he says, "They feed you like an animal so one day you start acting like one." He's been quietly saving, not money but sugar packets. Over months he hoards them in toothpaste caps, hides them inside soap bars. Then during breakfast one morning he pulls a stunt no one expects. As a guard slides his tray through, Tyrone tosses a mix of sugar and coffee into the air vent. An instant explosion of sticky mist and static sparks from the faulty light. The bulb bursts. Sparks fly. Alarms blare. For a brief second the tier goes dark. The inmates scream in joy, chaos disguised as freedom. Of course it's short-lived. Guards swarm in riot gear. They strip search every inmate, confiscate trays, and declare a food service emergency. For the next week, meals are replaced with the dreaded punishment loaf, cold, heavy, flavorless bricks. But something changes. That moment of rebellion spreads like wildfire in the men's minds. For once, the inmates had caused the guards to react, not the other way around. One night, Reynolds hears tapping through the vent again. A voice whispers, "They can take the food but not the hunger." And that's when it begins, the silent rebellion of the forkless men. The psychology of flavor. By now, Reynolds has spent over a decade in ADX. He's learned something no scientist ever could. Food isn't just about survival. It's about identity. He remembers how each taste used to remind him of life outside. Cinnamon meant holidays, butter meant warmth, fried chicken meant family. But after years of gray trays, those memories fade. Now even the smell of bleach makes his stomach growl. ADX doesn't just starve the body. It reprograms the brain. According to a study done by prison psychologists, inmates in extreme isolation begin to lose their sense of taste. The brain, deprived of flavor, starts confusing pain and taste receptors. That's why some inmates describe the loaf as burning, even when it's cold. The punishment becomes neurological. Reynolds starts experimenting. He saves bits of soap, scrapes metal from the wall and makes tiny symbols on his tray, not art but a ritual. He's trying to remember what flavor felt like. Then one day while eating his loaf he suddenly tastes something, sweetness. He stops chewing. He can't tell if it's real or imagined. Tears run down his face. In that moment he realizes the horrifying truth. His brain has started to invent flavor to protect him from despair. And that's how ADX breaks people. Not through fists or chains but through taste that doesn't exist. Death by loaf. It's early winter. The hallways of ADX are silent except for the sound of metal clanging and guards shouting codes. In cell D15 lives Marcel Ghost Duran, a man known for refusing every order. When they first gave him the punishment loaf he laughed. By the third day he threw it against the wall. By the 10th day he was hallucinating. He started scratching messages into the concrete with his nails. "Feed me real or bury me fake." The guards ignore him. Over the next week, Ghost's condition worsens. He stops talking. He lies motionless on the floor, clutching his stomach. The only sound from his cell is the faint hum of the light, buzzing, unending. Then one morning, during meal rounds, a guard slides his tray and notices no movement. He opens the door and finds Ghost cold, pale, still. The coroner's report lists heart failure due to malnutrition and dehydration. But the inmates know the truth. They call it death by loaf, a slow, legal death delivered one tray at a time. That day, Reynolds vows never to skip another meal again. Because in ADX, eating isn't survival anymore. It's rebellion against disappearing. The warden's table. Every year, the ADX warden hosts a staff dinner, A private event in the administration wing. Roast beef, fresh vegetables, apple pie, the works. The smell travels through vents, drifting faintly down into the prison tiers. That's how Reynolds first smells real food again, for the first time in 15 years. He presses his face to the vent, breathing deeply. The scent makes him dizzy. He imagines the warden sitting at a long table, surrounded by officers laughing, cutting into meat that still bleeds warmth. He imagines plates clinking, forks scraping, and a world that forgot he exists. And for a moment, something inside him snaps. He takes his tray and smashes it against the wall, shouting, "You eat while we rot." His voice echoes down the hall, raw and desperate. Guards rush in, tasers ready, yelling commands. When they drag him to the floor, he sees a piece of his own bread slide across the concrete, landing right beside his face. He laughs quietly. Because even in that chaos he realizes something profound. They might control his meals, but they can't control what food means to him anymore. The meal that ends the story, finale. After 22 years, Reynolds is finally released for good. His hair is white, his hands shaky, his stomach scarred from years of punishment diets. But there's something else, a strange calm. Reporters wait outside. Cameras flash. Someone hands him a burger, warm, juicy, dripping cheese. He stares at it for a long moment. He takes a bite. The flavors explode in his mouth, salt, fat, spice, smoke. It's everything he's dreamed of. But instead of joy he feels fear. His hands tremble. His vision blurs. He drops the burger and whispers, "It's too much." After decades of gray, his senses can't handle color anymore. He sits in silence, eyes wet, whispering to himself, "Freedom tastes strange." Cut to black. Text fades on screen. Every meal at ADX Florence is a reminder, survival isn't about food. It's about how much you can swallow before you lose yourself. Would you survive the ADX Florence food tour?